Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with The Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural law so that we might restore our American Republic. One of the questions we ask on the Institute on the Constitution's class called The American View of the Constitution is, who is the most powerful law enforcement agent in the country? And most people will go to the president or attorney general or FBI or CIA, but the answer is the county sheriff. Now, why would that be the case? Well, it's because he's the only elected law enforcement official. We elect the sheriff, and that makes him our choice for how the law is enforced in our county. And many sheriffs balk at being the arbiter of a constitutional issue because either they don't understand the Constitution or possibly they're more interested in bowing to political pressure exerted on them. But here in Lake County, we have a Bill of Rights Sanctuary County ordinance that will be heard on May 5th and May 19th at the County Commissioners meeting. We are fortunate that our Sheriff, Peyton Grinnell, is in favor of this ordinance being passed. But that won't prevent the opposition from showing up at the meeting, and all the commissioners themselves need a little bit of a push to do the constitutionally right thing. So I would encourage all who are in the seeing and hearing of our broadcast to set aside time to be at both of these meetings. And there is a well thought out letter you can actually send to your county commissioners. You can get that letter and contact information for our county commissioners by texting or calling Rick Carlins at 724-366-8869 with your email address. You can also get that information off the libertycitizens.com website, and I will post it in the comments below. With that, welcome Michael Levine.
Hey, Chuck. That's an interesting concept. You got my brain wheels turning already.
Is that right?
As it relates to some of the things we're going to talk about today, right? So
Yeah, there you
I'll
go.
let you kind of lead us into that. But certainly the Constitution is a very important thing. And, Rick Carlin's, what is it called? Peace Officers and Sheriffs and Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association is what it is. Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. The purpose of it is really to make our Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the United States of America, enforceable locally. That is the big deal. Okay. And
Yes, it
if you don't
is.
mind, Chuck, I'll just go ahead and close that part of it up by explaining to people that if you have a violation of your Bill of rights, then you're going to have to defend those rights in federal court. When the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers ordinance gets passed in Lake County, then your Bill of rights will be enforceable in local courts. And that's the reason we need to fight for it, Chuck.
There you go. There you go. And so I'm in favor. And Liberty Citizens, libertycitizens.com, I think, is the website that you can go directly to. And Rick's information is in the comments section. So this morning we wanted to talk about, what do we expect from our elected officials? I mean, we have an election coming up at the end of the year, and what do we want from these people? Do you have any right off the
First of
bat
all, we have
comments?
a primary in August. Okay. So here we are. We're heading toward mid-April. So, it's not going to be long before we're going to be in primary elections, Chuck. And I think it's really important, right? I mean, I'm telling you that I think if you interview people and say, what are the responsibilities of a county commissioner, you're going to get answers all over the court and very few who have deep or reasonable understanding of the job. Okay, Chuck? So I think that's something we're going to talk about today, and others. We can take a look at federal offices too, and state offices, et cetera. Because now I guess off air, Chuck. You and I talked about whether we're going to keep this to a state discussion or not. But when you think about the responsibilities and the job qualifications of a United States senator, that's a pretty big deal. And when you talk about the resume of a qualified governor for the state of Florida, that's a big deal. So what do we want in the background of the people that we elect to run our cities, counties, state, and then the federal government? And then when you cross over to the executive branch, which I already did, citing the governor, you've really got to say to yourself, what qualifications and what skill sets do we want these people to have? And I think that's really important as we're evaluating candidates, Chuck.
Yeah, well, we kind of put a few things together, and we've jumped around a little bit. Would you like to start with our United States senator and the race, or would you rather go back to governor?
I thought you and I agreed that we'd start with the county commissioners.
Yeah, well, I know,
Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's start
Okay,
with the
well,
county commissioners.
let's do that for sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Right.
so
And,
what do we
that's
got
an interesting
here?
thing, Chuck, if you don't mind me saying, that based on what the state legislature's done over the last few sessions, the job of a county commissioner has changed quite a bit. Can you agree, Chuck?
Yes, absolutely. They have far less to do anymore, far less responsibilities, or
Well, I would
maybe.
agree with. I understand where you're going with that, and I don't disagree with your mindset. But I would suggest that because of that situation, their workload has increased.
Yeah, I guess I probably would have changed that to more to do with less responsibility, less authority. I think is the word
Well,
I'm looking for. Authority,
authority
less.
is a better word
Yeah,
than
right. That's the word I'm looking
responsibility,
for.
right? Right. And it's so interesting, when you get into the whole concept of home rule and stuff like that, because home rule is a fabricated concept. The state divvies up all power, right? If you want to carve out a new county in the state of Florida, you've got to apply to the state. Okay, you have to be chartered by the state. And if you want to start a municipality, a city, then you've got to incorporate and be approved by the state. Okay, so the state holds all the cards, right? So this goes back into what your background is, Chuck, which is being a professor of the Constitution. And that kind of goes back to my earlier thought about what are the responsibilities, qualifications of a senator, because obviously, a United States senator needs to understand. He needs to be fighting to protect the citizens' rights under the Constitution of the state of Florida. And the state of Florida has the same responsibilities to protect citizens' rights. But that's not what's happening. So then you get back to the county commissioner, and when the state strips them of their home rule, which is a idea, not a structure of government. This is something that as Americans, we've always just agreed that the closer government is to the people, the better. Yet, because of politics, Chuck, and I'll get into that if you'd like, that concept has died. And there's no basis for it in the law. So we may be facing a time when it's time to amend our state constitution to decide and actually assign responsibilities for how much home rule do we want constitutionally, and I'll extend that to statutorily, because there's obviously when you change something in the Constitution, it's permanent. Let's just call it, even though it is amendable, but we can define those home rule in statute as well, Chuck.
There you go. So what do we want from our county commissioners? What do we expect from them?
You know, Chuck, I answered this question when I ran for a county commission seat in 2016. And I believe, for the most part, um, the core responsibility of most government is to manage the money, right? So, for example, that's, I would suggest, the first responsibility of a county commissioner is to effectively manage the budget. Um, but then, based on what we just talked about, it, it's also today the responsibility of a county commissioner to fight for the rights of the citizens in our county. And then you can talk about, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, which is a very fringe argument on what we're talking about right now. But if I was a county commissioner, Chuck, I would be up lobbying my legislature, and I'd be petitioning the governor all the time in a very clear voice that I want to control land use in my county. And I can explain that, and I have explained it. And that is a hot topic that is, I will be sure, because I am bringing attention to it in my areas of influence, Chuck. But that's something, and of course, the players who actually do that, the commissioners, I'm talking to them as well. So, that's a big deal. And now I would expect our county commissioners not only to manage the budget, but also to defend the right to define the character and the priorities of citizens of this county, every county in Florida, but in our case, Lake County, Chuck.
Well, let's go ahead because we have just so much time. Let's just jump right over to the governor's race. I mean, we've got a list of people who are candidates for governor, and I counted, and I could have counted incorrectly, but I counted 45 different candidates running for governor. And again, I did my best to sweep through here and see how many Republicans. There are 14. Again, I'm saying that I could have counted wrong, but there's at least 14 that I counted. So what do we want from our governor, Mike? I mean, all these people desperately are interested in being our governor, but what should we be looking for from them?
Chuck, this is a really interesting subject. Thank you for asking the question, but and of course, I'm very interested in your opinion as well. But the big thing that happens to me, Chuck, when I start thinking about the governor, my mind immediately goes to hurricanes and natural disasters, right? And then based on my political experience, I know that the institutions of our state and the federal government too, Chuck, if you think that those guys and girls won't withhold services if they don't like you, or if you're not in step with what their institution wants, or you haven't paid homage to them, or if I was elected governor today, Chuck, the first thing I would do is I'd be sucking up to all of our emergency response people. I would be saying, hey, what do I have to do to earn your loyalty and support in the case I have a 5-star hurricane hit the coast and I've got to rebuild all the bridges in South Florida, right? I mean, that would be my A1. Because again, it goes to protecting the people, right? So that's a big deal, right? And for me as a governor, and again, you can take a look at the 45 candidates and 14 Republican candidates, and all that. And if I was a governor, Chuck, I'm telling you right now, the first thing I would do is I would make sure that I had my ducks in a row about how it's going to go when a natural disaster hits this state. And keep in mind, Chuck, we're fighting in Iran right now. And, it wasn't too long ago that the Chinese Communist Party took over Russian military bases in Cuba, 90 miles off of our coast. And I was in the Capitol in Tallahassee with a state senator when the senator had to go into a special meeting that was specifically called a private secret meeting, by the way, to deal with the threat of having the Chinese Communist Party 90 miles off of our coast, Chuck. So, and then you can get into the mundane managing the budget argument that I made earlier, which also is very important and still definitely applies. But I'm saying to you that being the governor of a state with whether your number's 22 million residents or 24 million residents, and your budget $125 billion to $140 billion, this is not for, the guy that just graduated from the senior class in high school, Chuck.
Yeah, well, when I look at governor, I guess a little closer to home. The idea that the governor shouldn't be all that adverse to the representatives that are sent to him. I think that's the way it should be. It should be that our representatives have a great deal of influence over the governor, because that's that's the people talking. Unfortunately, I'm not confident that the representatives that are in Tallahassee have genuinely their constituents' interests at heart anyway. So you almost look for a governor maybe who will defend the average Republican. I don't know if or the average citizen is probably a better word, and I just don't know if that's happening at all, or has been happening anytime soon. I've got a bunch of different races here. There are much fewer people looking for the Attorney General position, but we still do have two Republicans. One of them is called the incumbent, but he was not elected. He was selected. That would be James Hugmire, and then he has someone else running, Stephen Leskovich. So we don't really, I guess, want to get into the who's who as to what do we want from an attorney general.
Well, Chuck, the attorney general is a critical position in Florida, because they determine really what laws what infractions of the law get prosecuted and what don't, right? Let's face it, every time somebody breaks the law, there's not a prosecution. So, and the attorney general sets the tone, right? When Pam Bondi was the attorney general here in Florida, she was on these, on the pill mills, right? That was her big thing. She harped on pill mills all the time. So we got to look at it and say, based on who gets elected attorney general, you're going to get a big push to enforce different areas of the law, depending on who gets elected to that slot. So that's a big deal, Chuck. I'll let you kind of, direct this conversation the way you want to go based on what I just said, because we haven't decided to start talking about the qualifications and characteristics of each one of these candidates. So I'll refrain from doing that unless you shove me into that rabbit hole.
No, I wouldn't do a thing like that. But I do want to make sure that people understand that here in Florida, we have to be very careful because our representatives are selected. And not just the CFO, but the Commissioner of Agriculture. He's also.
That's not true.
I'm sorry. I jumped one. Sorry. The CFO, not just the Attorney General, but the CFO has an incumbent who has been selected, not elected. And I think it's important for us when we go to the voting booth that we have done our due diligence, because we're not necessarily choosing for an incumbent. He has not been elected. So you need to decide as a citizen if you really want any voice in who's running for office, or if you're just willing to bow the knee to these people who are selected for us. So we have this.
As I was looking through that list, Chuck, I found it very interesting that Republican National Committee Chairman Joe Gruters is still in that race.
Yeah, he is. We actually have, I think, 4 candidates, Republican candidates for CFO, and And again, it's just so important to take the time to look at these candidates and decide for yourself who do you want there, not who was selected by the powers to be there.
Right. So you take a look at that CFO race too, right? And you get Blaise Ingoglia. You know, keep in mind, Joe Gruters was a past president of the past chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, and so was Blaise Ingoglia. And but Blaise, you know, and of course I've known Blaise for a very long time. But he's out, you know, getting involved in counties and cities and stuff like that, and calling them out for wasteful spending and all that kind of stuff. And when you get into the job description of a CFO, I mean, is that what you want the CFO doing? And of course, I'm not saying whether I'm supported or opposed to it, but you know, running and you know, you got to take a look at the constitutional and statutory responsibilities of a CFO. The CFO's got a lot on his plate. So, you know, time is a finite resource. So you've really got to be very careful about the way you spend not only your time as the CFO or any other cabinet member, but the time and resources of your department, Chuck. And I think that's really important, you know, that people take a look at not just a microcosm of the job, but the whole job. So if I spend my time and resources, you know, heavily concentrated in one area of effort, how is the rest of the department running, Chuck?
And there you go. And I did inadvertently just do with my little thing here. I messed myself up. But Commissioner of Agriculture. Now that's an interesting race for me because it seems like the legislature decided to change some laws in order to get one of the Republican candidates off the ballot. So you have you have two different Republicans running for Commissioner of Agriculture. You have Ollie, Richard Earl Ollie, I guess, and Matt the Welder. Matt the Welder changed his name before he put his hat in the ring, and the Republicans decided to use that to take him off the ballot. Now, at this point, I'm not sure where that stands, but what are your thoughts on who we should? What are the qualifications for the Commissioner of Agriculture?
Well, what most people forget is consumer services fall under the Commissioner of Agriculture's job. So that's a much, you know, people think about the Commissioner of Agriculture and you're over farmers, but it's a much broader job description than that. And so I just want to keep that in mind because it's not just about agriculture, it's about consumer services as well. So, you know, that's like when you pull up to the gas pump and you'll see it's the Commissioner of Agriculture whose telephone number's on that gas pump, right? So it's about that and a lot of other things. So keep in mind that that's the case. And of course, you know, the thing with candidate Matt the Welder, I mean, that was a pretty cute move, right? By his name is Matt Taylor, actually. But you know, I mean, it was pretty tricky, right? To go out and actually legally change your name so that it could appear on the ballot in a very catchy way as a marketing move. And then, of course, what we always have to remember, Chuck, is before you poke the bear, you got to remember that the governor, the legislature, all these political institutions, they're powerful people. And if you think that you can stab them and they're not going to come after you with a significant response, that's what I was saying to you off camera, Chuck, that, you really need to, map out your battle plan before you jump into a fight that you may not be prepared for. And I think that this, of course, I'm not talking bad about Matt Taylor. I've seen Matt Taylor out on the campaign trail a few times, and he's a really good guy. He's a smart guy and all that. Whether he has the resume to do everything that the Commissioner of Agriculture job is, I don't know. I doubt seriously that that's true. But who is? I mean, take a look at anybody serving in public office today. and say, does their resume match their responsibilities? And I would say very few do, Chuck.
Yes, so we're just time is just flying by. So let's talk about our state senator. What are qualifications for a state senator? What are we looking for that, Mike?
You know, Chuck, it's so interesting. In my opinion, the first thing you have to have is you know what, you can be the smartest guy in the world with the best credentials and all the other things. You know what? But if you have the wrong intention, then actually being smart could be a detriment, right? I mean, you know, do you want your adversary being a genius and a strategist? You know, Donald Trump just got done talking about this guy Soleimani that he took out in his first term, and he said this whole thing in Iran would be a completely different thing if Soleimani was still alive, right? So, and he says, and Soleimani's a really bad guy. So the question becomes, you know, intelligence and intellect and credentials and qualifications is not all. If you have the wrong intent, then you're just going to go in the wrong direction. So for me, I just find it appalling. I would say none of our elected officials care about what I refer to as median household income families, Chuck. And I find it appalling that I would suggest none of our elected officials that enters into their into their calculus on how they do their job. If I was elected official, I would every single decision I made would come down to what is the impact of this decision on median household income families. That's all I would care about. If I can take care of median household income families, everyone else will do just fine. People who are at the bottom of the economic ladder will have something to aspire to, and people at the top of the economic ladder will benefit from living in a economy that they can afford, and they have even more disposable income under my program than they would otherwise, Chuck.
Which takes us to our state representatives. These are the closest state of wide officials, people who have access or have influence at the state level. What do we want from our state representatives, Mike?
Again, you know, our state representatives, number one, they should be in they should be in contact with their constituents, right? And that's not happening, not in our legislative delegation. Our representatives aren't interested, and you can. This is something that I'd like to do a whole show on one time, and that would, or two shows, or even a series, right? And just take each of the bills that the legislators file, and say, how does this resonate with their constituents? And I'm telling you that most of the constituents in our district from our legislative delegations have no idea what bills their legislators have filed, much less any sense that the legislation filed by our delegation is beneficial to them. And I think that's horrible. I will just say one more thing on this subject, Chuck. You know, it's amazing because the legislative priorities and the activities that go on in Tallahassee have a huge impact on our economy, but they never consult the economists. It's just amazing to me. We have, you know, highly credentialed economists in all the universities in Florida, and we don't ask them, if I pass this law, what is the impact going to be on median household income families? And we don't ask the question. Why not, Chuck? Oh, because we don't want to know the answer to the question, right? I mean, if, you know, affordability, right? Housing, groceries, utilities, transportation, energy, those are the baseline in cost of living in the state of Florida. Yet, I don't hear any legislator in the state of Florida asking our highly credentialed economists, what is the impact of this legislation on median household income families, Chuck?
So, as our time dwindles down to the last few seconds, why don't you give us a final wrap up on, you know, what's going on and how can we be more responsive to what's happening, especially during primary season?
A couple of weeks ago, I made a presentation to a grassroots organization, and I told them, I said, listen, if you don't know what your personal legislative priorities are, then that's something that you need to go home and think about, pray over. And you should be able to actually come up with a list, write down a list. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, however many issues you are passionate about. But every single one of us needs to know what our legislative priorities are. What do you think our state legislature, our Congress people, apply it to any race or any position in government that you want? And I would suggest that the conversation we're having today is about what are the skill sets of the candidates that you are willing to vote for to fill these billets. And we should have a checklist of what the qualifications of those candidates should be, because otherwise, Chuck, this is where we are, is that the rhetoric that's sown into social media and the public domain is what we base our opinions on, which is basically not stable, permanent, structural discussions. They are highly fleeting and political discussions, which what is relevant today will not be relevant tomorrow. And you'll have people in office who are not serving your interests because we didn't select our elected officials based on a foundational set of qualifications, Chuck.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much, Mike Levine. And thank you all for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic, or check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic ROAR. Please like and share the program. And remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And God bless America.